Okay, and welcome. We're joined now by Doug Downer, the founder of Franchise Ready and many other things, and franchise author, and what else are you, Doug?
Just a franchise guy.
What did you say he was, Joel?
I say he's the most actively in franchising followed professional on LinkedIn. He's got a massive following on LinkedIn.
That's a big claim. That's a big claim Joel's making. So that's a good claim. So
I use the word active because there are other people in franchising, but Doug is really active in it.
Doug is very active. Yeah. So you're so active, we're going to be talking about bringing international franchise brands to the Australian market, because I don't see anyone else with as many frequent flyer miles as you have and as many expo days standing up as you have internationally. So what does it take for international brands to bring them to the Australian market and be successful here?
I think there's two parts to that. One is, what do they actually need? And then the second part is, what are they prepared to do? And it's interesting because Australia, it's generally accepted that you have to pay to retain the services of a franchise professional to help you grow your brand. But that doesn't exist in a lot of the international markets. Like having just come back from, KL in Malaysia, no one wants to pay for you to do the work for them. They're happy to give you a much bigger success fee when you're successful, but there's a real cost to, marketing and your team's time to get leads and get interested in international brands.
Why do you think it is they don't? What are they expecting?
I think if I look at the US, like in the US, they'll give up to 100% of the franchise fee away to the broker network to facilitate a sale.
Within the US?
Within the US.
Because they're after an income stream going forward.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, look, every franchisor really should be looking at that. I always say to the franchisors we work with, your initial franchise fee is your marketing budget to get your next franchisee, because the value of your business is really in that recurring revenue model. But it's around, and so I think because the US has led the way, the rest of the world sort of followed. And so they're happy to give you a significant percentage of the upfront fee. Yeah, but they don't want to pay for it as they go. But there's a physical cost, unless you're using Joel's model but that takes time. You've got to have money and you've got to invest resources. And so there's a physical cost for us to be able to bring an international brand. Having said that, we're working with 9 international brands at the moment, and they're from all over the world. Like there's one from the US, there's one from Spain, there's one from India. Oh, it's actually 2 from India. So we're getting interest from all over the world. And you know what's interesting, Joel? That all of that inquiry has come through LinkedIn. So the work that you do, people see you and they go, okay, here's the guy that I need to talk to. Then it's about, how do I get them to actually spend the money? And look, we could have 30 brands if I said yes to everyone that asked us to bring a brand into Australia. I think the challenge when you look at the Australian market is the unit economics have got to stack up. Like in most of those international markets, the labour cost is a lot cheaper, the cost of goods is cheaper, rent's cheaper.
Are they surprised with the numbers when you show them here in Australia?
They are.
Or do they underestimate it?
It's interesting because if we take a brand out, and I think there's a massive opportunity, and I know this is probably another question you're going to ask me, but there's a massive opportunity for good Australian brands to go international because of the unit economic piece.
Because of how hard they have to work here to make it work. Yeah.
I mean, we've done our own studies on this, and Australia is the hardest place to do business from a profitability and return on investment perspective. So it is harder. The other thing that we're challenged with international brands is their unrealistic expectations of the value of their brand in this market, and also their expectation in terms of, what percentage of the upfront franchise fee and royalty that they're going to get. Often they're looking for 50%, and they're looking for stupid numbers in the hundreds of thousands of US dollars. And the challenge we face is our currency, the value of our dollar is worth, 65, 70 cents of a US dollar, or 50 pence if it's a UK brand. So these are the challenges. So the biggest challenge bringing a brand in is educating them around expectations. Now, I've been a master franchisee, and the reason I'm no longer a master franchisee is because the model didn't work for me. You've got to leave enough on the table for the franchisor. So my biggest challenge bringing an international brand to Australia, one is to get them to pay for that service, and 2 is to get them to be realistic around the fee structure and what they're going to get out of it.
Joel, you're doing a bit of consulting internationally. Those people, and you have quite a bit of exposure online as well to the US market. Is there any chatter on what their views are on coming this way?
There's a couple of brands which is a direct competitor of ours. I'll give you an example, actually. A guy called Mike Andes from Augusta Lawn Care.
You tell me about this guy a lot.
Jim's so nice. He invited him over to come to our training for free. And he's basically just doing research on what's our model like compared to him. And he's trying to get into the market here, but he's been struggling a bit. Like, he's got a massive personal brand in the States, and his model's a bit more like, if you want to scale to 20, we're the franchise for you. Jim's Mowing is the one if you want to be a sole trader. He actually runs ads saying that. But it's interesting.
That's cheeky.
It is very
considering
cheeky.
the red carpet was rolled out.
Yeah, it is
I think that's a fair call.
Well, you know what? I'm actually going to give a talk to our franchisees, and his speaking fee was around 30 grand, so I got that for free.
Okay.
So it works a little bit both ways.
There you go.
But yeah, he's been struggling with it over here. But probably I find they set up interesting with the broker sort of style stuff. They've obviously got brokers for real estate, for franchising. I find that really odd that they do that. I'm surprised they don't do what we do here with like the maybe a franchisor model. They'd start doing recruitment from in-house. And I think over there, I've seen a lot of businesses popping up actually. They're actually now trying to do what we basically do for gyms, but for franchise consultants. Start a YouTube channel as a franchise consultant, start building your personal brand, start doing social media as a franchise consultant, which is an interesting thing that I've sort of noticed about. They're actually taking our content approach and actually putting it to the consultant side. They're still not changing the model, but they're using content to try
Just
and
the same
build
methods.
Same methods, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
I think, my biggest been talking about brokers, using brokers to sell franchises here in Australia, even for international brands. The issue mostly that I've seen over the years of all the brokers I've been involved with is the nickel and diming of brokers. I mean, the retainer and then success fee is just not worth it, because most of the time the retainer, but they want to treat you like you're a full-time recruitment person for them, forgetting that you might be working to actually make a living working with 6 or 7 others.
Yeah. I think brokers in Australia are very different from the US. They're very transactional. A lot of them don't understand franchising, and franchising's harder than selling an independent
very
business.
much
So they try and steer away from it. So they don't do a good job of it, and they don't want to do it. And you don't see many broken firms, get involved in franchise recruitment. And I think it's because, in the US where they're getting the 50 to 100% of the franchise fee, there's enough money in it for them to do it. Here, the franchisors are conditioned, if they do use a brokerage service, because we offer that service as well, they might give you, they nickel and dime you, because they're already spending, they've got this infrastructure built up. So it goes to your point, Joel, there's this infrastructure, and so that's the old way of doing it. So if you think about what you talk about, the old way of marketing, the old way of franchise recruitment, build a team, and there was quite a good brand that we did a piece of work with in Australia. They had about $600,000 in payroll costs in their franchise recruitment team. Then they were spending another $20,000 a month on Meta. They were spending close to $1 million, and they were maybe bringing in between 5 and 10 franchises a year. We put a proposal to them that said, here's what it could look like if you were to outsource it to us. It would have cost them an eighth of what it would cost internally, but they're stuck in this paradigm of this is how we've always done it, and this is what works in Australia. Well, it's not working. Listen to Joel and you see what he's doing, because he's taking a more holistic view. They're still stuck in this old way of franchise recruitment.
They're stuck in, and from the marketing end, and we talk about it all the time, Joel, they get stuck in the attribution end. It's like, we can't create all this content for this cost, because how do then we attribute the leads to it? And can we attribute a sale to that podcast? No, I can't, so I won't invest in it.
Exactly.
That happens all the time.
Happens all the time. But I want to just ask you something a bit back about, because your experience with bringing international brands here, about the culture aspect of Australia. Like, how does that play into all this sort of stuff? Because obviously Australia's got a very unique and different culture. Like, how does that factor into brands and what you advise people?
One of the first things that we recommend is that they invest in using, whether it's us or another consultant, to do a feasibility, to actually understand the brand. What do they need to do to adjust it to suit the market conditions in Australia, whether it be taste profile or employment law or franchise attraction strategies, the fact that there isn't a brand awareness of their particular brand in this market. So we do a feasibility, but and it's not expensive when you think about how many US brands have come into, if I use the US, how many brands have come into Australia that have exited because they came in here thinking that...
And cost $2, $3, $4 million in the process. Yeah.
I mean, there's a good example of that, and it's probably not nice to say, but GYG's done the same thing going into the US. You could argue, did they do the right research? Was that the right market to go into?
So like you say, $50,000 research might have saved $40 million?
Yeah, could have.
Probably.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like, you mentioned about the brand, like do you think people just maybe overestimate how many people, the strength of their own brand, and they come in and think it's just going to pick up and no one has any buy-in or knows who they are?
Yeah. I think there's an arrogance to some brands.
Yeah.
Especially the US brands, I think, coming into the Australian market.
Yeah. They figure, we work there, it'll work everywhere. And look, they'll look to, some other American brands that have done well here and think that it's an easy market. Now, McDonald's, KFC came into this market when it was probably easier to do business. I mean, I cut my teeth in McDonald's back in the 80s. So, it was easier to do business back in the 80s than it is today. So it's a very different market. So they need to engage a consultant that actually understands the market and say to them, if you're going to come into this market, here's how you need to adjust your model. Starbucks is a good example. Krispy Kreme's another good example. And I had personal experience with both of them where they didn't listen and didn't customise to the Australian market.
Yeah. And also with going the other way then, with Australian brands going out, you mentioned it's a great opportunity. So do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. Look, I think you've got GYG is an example of potentially getting it wrong.
Right, yeah.
I had personal experience taking an Australian brand when I was a director of a company back in the 90s, and it wasn't what GYG burnt, we burnt over $1 million, but we didn't do the research. And it just goes back to what I said earlier around the feasibility. Actually understand the market, and then understand that if you're talking about the US market is not one country, it's 50 countries. And so it's actually understanding of the states that operate in the US, what are the ones that are going to lend themselves to your brand and how would you enter those markets? Like I have one brand that we've taken into the US and they're operating in Jacksonville in Florida and doing phenomenally well, doing 3 times the volume that they do in Australia. We signed a master franchisee for New York 2 years ago, but we didn't, and it was opportunistic because you've got to register in New York, you've got to be trading in New York before you can grant a franchise. So you actually need to understand the lay of the land. Like there are 14 registered states in the US where you've actually got to register your franchise within the state to get approved to be able to then go to market. So we've had this master franchisee. Thankfully, he hung around, but for 2 years, and he's opening, I think, in the next week or so.
For 2 years, it's been all right.
It's a long window.
Here's the beauty. That business, the labour cost, New York's a little bit higher, but you can go into Texas or Florida and, your labour cost is half what it is in Australia. So you're already putting 10% straight onto the bottom line. So it's understanding the markets that you want to go into. So I've just done a feasibility report for an Australian brand that's got 30 locations, which is small, but their model will work in the US market. And so we've actually identified what's the roadmap in terms of where do you go first, second, third, and how do we market to get into those
So
markets.
For brands coming here, are you noticing an increase in it, or are people becoming more wary and thinking, gee, the cost impediments to operating in the Australian environment is slowing that down?
I think there's a decrease in the number of food brands is what I'm saying, whereas it used to be food was easy. Of the 9 that we're currently working with, only 2 of them are food brands. The rest are other services. So I think, and they can work because of they don't have that high cost of goods and that high labour percentage, so the margins are better. So we are still seeing a high level of inquiry, less in the QSR space.
So, okay, as we wrap it up, if an international franchise executive is watching this, okay, I won't say, give me your 3 things, because I hate those. Give me the 3 top things. What would you be wanting them to consider? If they were contacting you, for example, and everyone wants a quality inquiry on it, what would you want them to have already really thought about and factored in and considered before thinking of coming here?
I think if they haven't done their research, so we're working with a brand out of Singapore that's done all of his research. He presented his business plan. He created videos for me that he sent to me. He's actually ready. What we need to do is just tweak his model a little bit. So the first thing is do the research, whether it's using a consulting firm to do that for you, but someone that's on the ground in that market that understands, like when we work with a brand, we know what the rentals, the rental market looks like. We know what's a good site, what's not a good site. So you need someone that actually understands and can tell that client what they'll need to do. The other thing is making sure that they allow a fair enough return on investment for the person that they're selling that brand to. So that, the model that I typically recommend is 75-25. The master's got to keep 75%, and the maximum that the parent company should be getting is 25%. I usually go in a little lower, and then it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to negotiate. But the problem you've got is a lot of internationals want 50-50, and that doesn't work. It doesn't leave enough money on the table to grow a brand, and that's why so many brands don't work, because they haven't given their partner, who's not truly a partner. I mean, partnerships are meant to be 50-50, so that's where that mentality of doing the 50-50 split comes from. But you've got to give that master franchisee, your partner, the opportunity to be successful.
Excellent. Awesome. So that's international franchising into the Australian market. We'll do something else on going out of the Australian market soon.
Yep.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.